Thank you very much for joining us for today's Innovative Solutions for Solar Financing webinar. I'm Emily Dodson with the International City-County Management Association, and I'll be moderating. Today's webinar is hosted by ICMA and the National Association of Regional Councils in partnership with the Department of Energy's Solar America Communities program. To learn more about the Solar America Communities program, visit www.solaramerica.communities.energy.gov. Today, we will be hearing from Sam Rourke with Sonoma County, California, Rachel Mazzaro with Joint Venture Silicon Valley, and Ben Foster with Optineam. Our first speakers will be Rachel and Ben about the Joint Venture Silicon Valley Collaborative Renewable Energy Procurement process. Rachel Mazzaro joined Joint Venture Silicon Valley in early 2009 as their Associate Director of Climate Initiatives, and leading the organization's efforts in developing effective collaborative solutions for the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions from public agencies' operations. Additionally, Mazzaro leads the organization's energy storage initiative and works on related climate change clean tech programs. Ben Foster is the Vice President of Operations at Optineam. Mr. Foster has over 20 years of management experience and is responsible for the U.S. operations of Optineam. He is responsible for driving positive change for the environment while enabling the solar energy market, system owners, and investors to achieve long-term value while lowering project risk. As an industry leader, Ben has participated in and led collaborative efforts to improve practices and deploy them across the United States and in China, including federally funded projects, industry white papers, and best practice guides. The floor is yours, Rachel and Ben.
Well, hi, my name is Rachel Mazzaro. Again, I'm the Associate Director of Climate Initiatives at Joint Venture Silicon Valley Network. And I'll start by just telling you a little bit about our organization. Joint Venture is a nonprofit public-private partnership located in San Jose, California. And we work throughout Silicon Valley, which we define as San Mateo and Santa Clara counties, as well as a portion of Southern Alameda and Santa Cruz counties. The organization is intended to bring together leaders in our community from the public sector, from the private sector, from other nonprofits, foundations, academia, to bring them all together to work on issues that affect our economy and our quality of life here in Silicon Valley. Next slide, please. So to give you a little bit of a sense of how this initiative was formed, it came out of our Public Sector Climate Task Force, which is a group of Silicon Valley cities, counties, towns, and other public agencies. And it was established in 2007 with the purpose of bringing these folks together to talk about their sustainability efforts in their communities, to share best practices, talk about challenges and solutions, and to potentially engage in collaborative efforts to help reduce their greenhouse gas emissions from their own public agency operations. So the Silicon Valley Collaborative Renewable Energy Procurement Project, the SVREP, was launched by the task force in partnership with the County of Santa Clara, California. I think it's important to note that we launched this initiative out of this existing framework of collaboration, which is something that we would highly recommend. Next slide, please. So why would we want to collaborate on renewable energy projects? As many of you guys know, there are significant challenges when it comes to installing renewable energy technologies. The major one that people talk about all the time is the high upfront costs that are associated with the purchase and installation of renewable energy technologies. But in addition to that, there's a significant amount of staff time and resources needed to dedicate to these kinds of projects, as well as a really steep learning curve in terms of understanding the financing options and available incentives, as well as just the process of installing technologies. And then a lot of public agencies are trying to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, so reach those goals and state mandates. So the opportunity that we had here was to bring a number of public agencies together to collaborate in a renewable energy procurement project so that we could decrease costs through collaboration, through aggregate purchasing, but also decrease costs in terms of the staff time and resources needed. It also was an opportunity for us to standardize the procurement documents to streamline the process, basically, through standardization, to accelerate the deployment of regional projects, and some of these may not have even may not have happened at all without the collaborative effort. So it's not just accelerate, but also enable some of these regional projects. And also, we wanted to create something in an innovative new way to collaborate on these kinds of installations so that we could serve as a model for similar efforts across the region and the United States. Next slide, please. So to give you a little bit of an overview of the project, this was a collaboration of 9 public agencies in Silicon Valley. They were spread across San Mateo and Santa Clara counties. The farthest north was the city of Pacifica, and the farthest south was Morgan Hill. And we had about 70 solar installation sites. They included carports, rooftops, and ground-mounted systems, and a total of over 14 megawatts of solar generation potential. And to give you a sense of what kinds of facilities we were including here, we had facilities such as community centers, city halls, fire and police stations, office buildings, libraries, and other publicly owned facilities. Really nothing of this type had been done before at this scale. And at the time of the procurement, this was the largest multi-agency project to date. Next slide, please. I just want to give you a sense of the roles and responsibilities for this initiative. I think this was a very important aspect of the model and what helped to make it successful. We had broken down the roles and responsibilities into 4 categories. We had the lead agency, that was the County of Santa Clara, California, and really they developed the solicitation documents, they released the RFP, evaluated and selected vendors, of course in partnership with the other project participants. Now, joint venture was the regional convener. So essentially, we were facilitating the collaboration. We brought together the participants, we recruited them to the project, obtained the preliminary site information, planned meetings and events, publicized the project, and all those kinds of things. And it's really important to note, I think, that it's important to have a regional convener that is an independent third party that has absolutely no financial interest in the project. We weren't making any money off of it. That wasn't our motivation. Our motivation was because it was part of the mission of our Public Sector Climate Task Force. And I think that's something that helps gain trust from the participants and helps enable a lot of different aspects of the project. The next role I wanted to talk about is the technical advisor. Of course, that's Optiny here, and Ben Foster is representing Optiny, and he will talk more in just a minute. But I think it's important to bring on a technical advisor very early on in the project. In retrospect, we probably would have brought Optiny on a lot sooner. And the technical advisor has the role of leading the data aggregation, the strategic bundling of sites for the RFP, and really provides expert guidance throughout the process through the RFP, evaluation, and negotiation, and much more. And then, of course, the 4th role here is the participants. So we had other Silicon Valley public agencies that were participating in this effort. And next slide, please. The other participants that were included in this particular effort are listed here, and you can see on that map there the distribution of solar installation sites, the rooftop, carport, and ground-mounted installation sites throughout the Bay Area. at these 9 agencies. Next slide, please. So I just want to give you a little bit of a sense of how the collaborative structure worked here. Basically, the sequence of events was that we gained initial expression of interest through our public sector climate task force from these public agencies in terms of what kinds of sites they have, gaining some preliminary site information, and giving us a sense of the number of projects and the type of projects in the region. Then we did a formal MOU between the project participants and the lead agency, which is the County of Santa Clara. And then all of the sites for all 9 agencies were bundled and bid out together so that we could reduce costs through aggregate purchasing. At the same time, the final contracts were actually signed on an agency-by-agency basis. Now, from the lead agency perspective, you might ask yourself, why would anyone want to be in the lead? It sounds a lot easier to be a participant, to have a lead agency there doing the actual RFP development and releasing the RFP and evaluation and all that. The ideal lead agency is one that would install solar on their facilities no matter what. They are dedicated to doing this kind of project. They are moving forward with it regardless of whether or not they engage in a collaborative effort. The difference is that the ideal lead agency sees the benefits of collaboration, that by collaborating, they not only provide leadership across the region, but they also decrease their own costs and gain better competition for the RFP. So they're actually benefiting their own agency at the same time significantly, and we'll show you that in the results. In addition to that, they're increasing the economic activity within and around the county, which is important to them. So from the other agency's perspective, the participants, they might come into something like this from a variety of different, for a variety of different reasons. Perhaps they can't easily or cost-effectively pursue this kind of project on their own. They might be able to pursue this kind of project on their own, but they understand that through collaborating, they'll be able to get a better deal. And they might also want to enter into a collaboration like this because some of their sites might not be very attractive to vendors. But by including them in a larger pool of sites, they're able to enable those installations. So with all of that said, I'm actually going to hand it over to Ben Foster now from Optimy, and he's going to talk a little bit more about the project timeline, how we bundled the site, some site examples, and then the results from the SC rep and what's happening now with the model.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. This is Ben Foster with Optimy, and one thing to note is, as a technical advisor to this effort and others, we do not represent any of the actual installers, the engineering, procurement, construction, or financing companies, so that we can focus on success of the project and working together from a collaborative perspective to deliver these results. And in that respect, it's been very exciting to work with this group because of the opportunities that working together enabled for the financing options were available to them, as well as the economic benefits and economic activity regionally, which we know is a growing and important issue and continuing to create jobs and economic activity. The timeline was that in 2009, the project itself was defined, meaning what are we trying to accomplish and what are the scope and scale of the sites and the agencies that wanted to participate, as well as an initial request for information and survey of the market capabilities. Obviously, that was after the 2008 recession, or at least the initial aspect of some of the financing and other key challenges that had emerged in the market from both technology and financing and vendors. So it was important to survey the market to see what was the latest capabilities and the interest. Last year, the RFP was issued. Vendors were evaluated with awards made PPA contracts were negotiated, and then construction actually started in late 2000, in 2011, and is continues underway. And as well, there is a phase 2, which we'll talk about, that is going to continue to move into next year. So next slide, please. So from a planning perspective, it's important to look at the timeline. Now, we do believe, and we'll get to this in a couple of slides, that with the best practices that can be accelerated, but it is important for those of you who are considering this type of collaborative effort is to make sure that you're planning appropriately from a time perspective to move as quickly as possible, but in realizing that it can take a significant amount of time to bring all of the different agencies together in this type of structure. One of the key features here was strategically bundling the sites. As from the earlier slide, there were 70 different sites across 9 agencies. Now, they all have different characteristics. Each agency may have their own constraints or opportunities in the different financing mechanisms they have available to them. So it was important to bundle those by different common categories. An example of that we can see on the next slide, please, which is looking at how those individual sites were bundled. So looking at the large system sites, here's an example of the actual bundles that were created for this particular project, although that would vary based on the different characteristics. Large size systems were those over 650 kilowatts, close to the sub-utility scale, that there are certain vendors that are interested and have experience in that particular area. These were either rooftop or ground-mounted systems. And then below that were the medium-sized systems, which are in the 160 to 650 kilowatt range, and then small size, 160 or in the 200 kilowatt range and smaller. The reasons for breaking it up this way was, one is to find and attract the largest scale, the large, highly competitive from a pricing and quality perspective vendors for the large systems, where also on the small scale to open up the opportunities for local vendors that maybe have a smaller portfolio, a successful portfolio of installing rooftop-mounted systems, but maybe couldn't effectively compete on the large scale, and vice versa, that those larger vendors would not generally be interested in the smaller rooftop scale projects. So by breaking it up this way, we actually had this particular approach validated from the market by seeing that there were certain vendors that only offered proposals for the large-scale systems, certain that only offered proposals for the small-scale systems, and some that overlapped in between. Next slide, please. So the financing mechanism overall, which is important to look at, and we'll see a couple of examples of the different types of projects, was generally a power purchase agreement. As Rachel had mentioned earlier, that the power purchase agreement, certainly in 2010, was not generally available to these type of systems, sub 500 kilowatt size or 300 kilowatt size systems. With this collaborative approach, we were able to unlock basically that particular financial mechanism for agencies that had smaller scale systems, all the way down to 40 kilowatt systems, that individually would not be able to get financing options. But because they were part of a group, the vendors were willing to offer these terms because they could spread the transaction costs across multiple individual sites and multiple agencies. So here's this slide right now is Santa Clara BTA, Valley Transit Authority. This is one of the large-scale systems. As you can see, it's over 1 megawatt, and this is across a bus parking depot and maintenance facility. So this actually has the ability to offset more than 100% of the on-site power that is needed for this facility, and this current facility is actually under construction right now. Next slide, please. This is the next facility happened to fall into the medium scale bundles, and this is on a waste management, a newly created waste transfer station and materials recovery facility. So it actually, the interesting thing here is that there were 2 buildings, as you can see on the bottom image, that were looked at. Originally, there was only one that was included in the proposal, but then as the SBWMA, as this particular agency that was part of the group, evaluated and got comfortable with solar, they actually realized that there were multiple routes that they could use. And so this project is actually going forward on multiple buildings instead of just the one that was originally put out. Next slide, please. Now, as part of the overall group, of course, Santa Clara County was the lead agency, and so here's some examples. This is on their sheriff's office parking canopy. You can see it under construction. This is as of just a few weeks ago, and where you can see the parking canopy structures going in, and as well, one of the key features that we think is important is celebrating the success. As we had looked at earlier, the timeline can continue over a number of months and even maybe a year or two from start to finish, and so these big opportunities, once contracts are signed or groundbreaking or turning on the system, making it active and putting it on the grid, are all events that are important to celebrate, because the key supervisors or board or commission that happens to approve these and move forward with these projects, we want to make sure that they get the recognition that they deserve for being leaders and for moving these projects forward for regional economic benefit, as well as for economic savings that are being delivered to each one of the agencies. Next slide, please. Now, some of those benefits were quantified very precisely within this effort, and that was done because this was a project that was the first of its type at this scale. Is not only, of course, reducing the greenhouse gas emissions from operations. In fact, some of the cities that are part of this effort are actually reaching their 5-year goals this year, but through the construction of these projects. Because of the power purchase agreement structure, which is the way that most of these projects went forward, they were able to lock in a long-term electricity cost with low escalation rates in the 2 to 4% range. The average or the bulk of the projects going forward were in the 3% range. As well, the volume discount impact of the overall project by bundling all these sites together in a well-organized fashion was there was between a 10 to 14% on average cost reduction for each of the systems, the PPA price or the construction cost, by all of these systems moving forward. Now, this substantiated the range that we had heard from the vendor community, which said about 10 to 15%, given the scale of these projects. The average was 12%, meaning that for a system that would have been purchased individually, we were actually able to quantify the volume impact. We had asked the vendor community and the respondents to provide pricing both with and without the bundling. And with that, we were able to calculate that on average there was a 12% reduction in the cost per kilowatt hour for the power purchase agreement by the group moving together rather than individually. And in fact, 25 of the sites were able to completely offset their energy production or the current on-site energy consumption through the production of clean energy through the solar projects. Now, in terms of the overall local economic activity, the combined projects are projected to generate about $70 million in local economic activity, or about 300 jobs. And this, because of the PPA structure that's able to capture the tax benefits, there's about $30 million of that that are coming in through the tax benefits that are being conveyed through the power purchase agreement provider through the investment tax credit and depreciation. So that means that from a local perspective, you are getting the benefits of some of the federal tax policy that helps to facilitate these transactions that actually go into reducing your local energy costs. Of course, the leadership that has been demonstrated through the agencies that are participating here, both through the large number of agencies and the results and the installations, provides not only regional but statewide and national visibility for some of those agencies that generally would not have that sort of visibility, and for those agencies that are looking for ways to advertise, maybe for companies to locate in their area, or increase visibility from a lifestyle perspective or jobs. Those are all things that are important. And then as well, most of the agencies move forward by owning the renewable energy credits for their solar projects, which means that in the short term and medium term, they can use those to offset or to reach their greenhouse gas reduction goals that in California are required. At the same time, if in the future they become more valuable, they then have that additional asset that they can use to generate more revenue and or reduce the cost of their energy even further. Next slide, please. Now, some of the applications of these lessons that were learned through the project are, and there was on the next slide, there will be we actually created with World Resources Institute and Joint Venture Silicon Valley Network a best practices guide that helps to document from the case study that was generated from this particular project, as well as one on the commercial side, into a set of best practices. That is, one, of course, is creating the model documents and a standard set of documents that are used throughout the entire process, whether that's the surveys that are needed to determine which sites and which individual agencies want to participate, all the way through to the procurement documents and the standard documents for leases or power purchase agreements or actual construction contracts. The bundling of sites was key for those of you who have followed other projects, maybe on an individual agency or jurisdiction, where there are too many sites that get all put together in one big group. That tends to break down from a market perspective where not all participants are interested in all types of sites. And so having the right grouping of sites was key to not only reaching the economies of scale that were expected, but also to increase competition and pricing benefits. And then involving the vendor community as well was key, because they needed to know that this scale of project was coming down through the pipeline, that they should be ready to respond to it in a timely fashion, but also to understand from their perspective how best could this be positioned to meet their needs in driving down the cost and making it easier for them to actually compete effectively for this particular project. On the next slide, please, is an image of the best practices guide that was created and published earlier this year. This is available for free download on the Joint Venture website at www.jointventure.org/purchasingpower, as you can see. And this includes detailed case studies for this particular project, as well as a commercial project that was managed by the World Resources Institute in the Silicon Valley area as well. And then it distills it down into 12 distinct steps that can be used to take the concept and apply it to other regions around the country to enable that purchasing power that those different regional efforts have. On the next slide, please. Let's see. Okay. So we see this already, this model beginning to roll out. So what the great thing is that the visibility that was created originally through the effort and the results, and then the best practices guide as a way to help other communities, that is beginning to catch on. So most immediately, there's a major effort underway right now in the metropolitan greater Washington, D.C. area that's being sponsored by the EPA, Green Power Partnership Program. And the website there is linked so you can see more about how this is being applied to the greater metro D.C. area. And in fact, in that particular area, we're looking at the potential for 15 or more agencies to work together on a similar collaborative effort. Portland, always a leading area, is continuing to look at ways for that region to move forward, potentially in this model or others. We've had a lot of interest as well from different cities and programs in China to look at how they might be able to use this in their own regions or localities domestically in China. In Phoenix, Arizona, through the Sustainable Cities Network, has interest in this and is continuing to evaluate how they can use this regionally. New York State and LA County and many others. So great thing is that this model, because it's replicatable and scalable, is continuing to kick off around the country, and certainly encourage others to do the same. Next slide. And then as well, an even bigger effort in the Bay Area is the Phase 2 effort. So there's an effort underway within the Bay Area to take this to an even broader community of those cities and agencies that have looked at and watched this project, the first phase, go quickly and effectively, and then how can they participate if they've already got their sites ready, or actually expanding the effort out to new counties and cities that were not actually eligible for the first round because of the geographic constraints. So this is looking across 4 counties, and with the lead agency being Alameda County. So where the lead agency in the first round was Santa Clara County, the second round is Alameda County. And this has got the potential to be 2 to 3 times larger than the initial phase. So this is really exciting to see even more growth and being able to leverage this model very quickly in the Bay Area for a second round. I think the next slide, which is the final slide. is additional information. So if you need any more information about the effort, of course, feel free to contact me, Ben Foster, or Rachel Massaro at Joint Venture. And there are some links to the Joint Venture website, which has just a huge amount of information from the very beginning of this effort back in 2008, 2009 through 2010, and all the way through current, of documents and process. And if you're really interested in learning all the nuts and bolts, all the information is there. The best practices guide is also can be found at WRI's website, that's World Resources Institute, and the EPA website as well on the Green Power Partnership Program and how they're rolling it out to the Metro DC area. And with that, I'd say thank you, and we'll turn it back over to the hosts for any questions over the next presentation.
Thanks, Rachel and Ben, for that great presentation. Next, we'll hear from Sam Rourke, and we'll save the question segment for the end. Sam is the Sonoma County Energy Watch Program Manager, where he facilitates energy projects for municipalities, NGOs, special districts, and small businesses throughout Sonoma County. He has worked in the field of sustainability for nonprofits, small businesses, and local government for 14 years. He previously served as a sustainability planner for Marin County and is LEED accredited. Sam, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, okay, great. Hi, once again, Sam Rourke. Thank you for having me on today. I just want to set a little context first about Sonoma County and take you into some of our innovative projects and how we finance them. First off, we joined the International Climate for Local Environmental Initiatives in 2001, and we had, in 2004, 9 cities plus the county all come together through strong support from the local advocacy community to adopt aggressive greenhouse gas emission goals. And we adopted 25% below 1990 levels by 2015. And we saw within that, what is the county's role? What can we do to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions? And what is what can we do? And so we established a goal of 20% below 2000 levels by 2010 in order to offset our own internal emissions. The Energy Watch program that I managed began in 2009, and PACE program, our Sonoma County Energy Independence Program, began in March of 2009. Next slide, please. One of the major ways we were going to reach our greenhouse gas emission goals is to reduce our energy use and to start producing some of our own energy as well using renewable energy sources. So we devised a comprehensive energy project in order to address multiple opportunities. And in order to be able to complete this, we put out a request for proposal for an energy services company to come in and look at all of our facilities. And a company out of Sacramento called Aircon Energy was selected. They came in 2008, inventoried all of our facilities, prepared an investment-grade audit, and came up with 101 energy efficiency measures that we could do throughout our facilities. Once we had that investment-grade audit in hand, we went through and we selected which ones we were going to do, and then went to the bank in order to obtain a loan. Next slide. The energy project essentially boiled down to 38 specific energy efficiency measures over 24 buildings. This included really comprehensive lighting retrofits in 20 of the buildings, yielding 1.3 megawatt hours in savings. We did HVAC replacements. We looked at motors and controls, variable frequency drives. We have a central mechanical plant that feeds hot and chilled water and electricity. There are 14 buildings on our county campus. That represents about 90% of all of our energy needs there in Sonoma County for the county operations. We upgraded that central mechanical plant with 4 new chillers, a new boiler, a new cooling tower, and then a fuel cell. We also did water retrofits for our detention facilities, which save about 20 million gallons per year. And we also did an ozonator for detention laundry facility, which cleans with ozone and should reduce our water use at that facility by about a third. Next. So the big part, the part that made it all fly and work well for us was a 1.4 megawatt hydrogen fuel cell. The The fuel cell is manufactured by a company in Connecticut called Fuel Cell Energy, and it generates about over 10 million kilowatt hours per year. Because it is a chemical process and is in high heat, it operates at about 1,400 degrees Fahrenheit. We have excess heat that we capture in order to be able to run a cogen, in order to offset the heating needs of our buildings. It produces virtually no pollution, so there's no nitrous oxides or sulfur oxides. It reduces our greenhouse gas emissions by 69% versus the grid power for the building it serves. It's designated ultra clean by the California Air Resources Board, and because it's so clean, CEQA also exempts it as well. Next slide, please. This following slide basically breaks down some of the utility costs. Our utility bill previously was around $5 million annually. With this comprehensive energy project, energy efficiency measures, and the fuel cell, basically cut our cost by $1.6 million down to $3.4 million annually. Our gas cost did go up because the fuel cell is powered by natural gas from the grid, where we scrub the sulfur off and then put it in the fuel cell. It's a carbon-carbonate fuel cell that then pulls the electrons off there and then feeds those electrons into our 12 kV central mechanical loop that feeds those 14 buildings I mentioned. And what we do is we amortize the equipment cost over the life of the comprehensive energy project, and we pay about $400,000 per year in maintenance costs. And that ensures that the fuel cell is operating as it should, and it also ensures that every 5 years we get a new fuel cell stack. The fuel cell energy will come in there, take the lid off the fuel cell, replace the stack with new modules, and then in order to ensure that it's still operating at maximum capacity. And then we basically did this for a 25-year life of the equipment. And so the fuel cell payback, which is great, was in 7 years. And just real quick, the graph on the right is our load profile for our county operation. So you can see middle of the daytime is where we peak out. In the middle of the night, we don't have as much load. So we actually feed back excess electrons and electricity to the grid when we are under, when we're at a point where we don't need as much, and then when we need more power, we pull from the electric grid in order to supplement our power. So, but the fuel cell pretty much runs at a continuous state. It's been in operation since March, and we're going to start modulating it in order to match our load curve much better now that some of the commissioning aspects have been done. So next, just to give you a little breakdown, basically a recap of our process. We hired the energy services company to do the audit. We went to Bank of America to get a private loan in order to be able to pay for the project. We began with the lighting work. We moved on mechanical systems. We installed the fuel cell last year. Basically, this whole process took about 2.5 years of planning and about 1 year of installation. 2010 was the year of installation. And then this last line on here, set up a revolving fund to capture energy efficiency dollars. That was essentially what we needed to be able to show that, okay, now we're saving this money because we're not having the high electric bills, but we need to capture that in order to pay off the debt that occurred to do the project. Okay, next slide. So now I'm going to dive a little bit more into the financing pieces of it, but just to give you a sense, our board of supervisors is very committed to sustainability. That makes my job a lot easier to have the political will behind us. And they said, yes, we want to do it, but we don't want there to be any cost to the general fund in order to accomplish this. So we went to our debt advisory committee. We looked at pursuing both private financing and bond financing to determine which was the best pathway forward. And in the end, we chose the private financing because it gives a slightly better rate, and we went with that option as well. Next slide. So these are the kind of the details of the project. It cost over $22 million. We received about $4 million in incentives and rebates. The grants piece was only like $200,000. That's kind of a small piece of it, but of that $3.9 million, $3 million of it was for the fuel cell, the self-generation incentive program that is offered for combined heat and power facilities, which is what the fuel cell is. So we financed $18.7 million. We have an interest rate of almost 5%, a little bit under that. Repayment term is 16 years. We closed on the loan, beginning of January 2009. In the modeling of the energy cost and how we're going to pay it back, we estimate the annual energy cost escalation to be 5%. It's been a little bit lower than that, but we feel like over the course of the 25 years that will be met. And we're also doing some other projects that will help, help us meet our debt service payment if the energy doesn't go up that high. The first year positive cash flow is year 12, and total payments are about $32 million. But we're going to save about $38 million over the life of the whole project. Next slide, please. So this just models the payments versus the energy escalation cost. The purple line is what we pay to the financing, and then the blue is what we'd be paying to the utility companies if we had continued to pay for those. Next slide, please. So our results. We reduced our greenhouse gas emissions by 6,000 tons, with electricity being, the big hunk of that. But we did save, 20 million gallons of water. We are saving about $1.6 million per year in utility savings. This had no general fund impact. We're also able to replace old equipment that was on the verge of dying or will be soon, and so we reduced our maintenance costs long term. And now we're in the process of verifying and measuring the benefits and making sure that we actually are getting the savings that was modeled through ERCON. And of course, one of the benefits of create jobs and increase collaboration among entities, and had other benefits as well. Next slide. So just some of the other projects we have going on. We have a 5 to 6 megawatt landfill gas project. Sonoma County has been named the most EV-ready community in the Bay Area. So we've got EV charging stations going in. We've got plug-in hybrids. We've got hybrids. Next line is actually a typo. I wish we had 820 megawatts for the solar, but we've only got 820 kilowatts of solar right now in county operations over 2 projects. But we are planning more with PPAs, and we're hoping to also take advantage of the model that Rachel and Ben laid out to do a regional collaborative RFP2. We've got the CEP with its 1.4 megawatts, and we've got 1 megawatt biogas in development through the Water Agency, 5 megawatts of solar through our Energy Independence PACE program, our own bill financing, which is the PG&E's program that allows us to borrow money to do projects at 0% interest. And then also we have the ARA funds to do energy projects and the Qualified Energy Conservation funds to do projects. And through the Energy Watch program, we've done about 5 megawatts of savings for energy efficiency for libraries and fire stations in the cities. And then something we're really proud of is we have 42 megawatts of installed solar in Sonoma County at this time. Next slide, please. So just a couple slides on our PACE program. The benefits, are pretty well known: reducing greenhouse gases, saving money, stimulating the local economy, and saving resources. This program has been in effect since 2009. There is legislation in Congress right now. I believe it's HR 2599, I believe. Thompson is a sponsor to help solve the issue with PACE and make it national. So our PACE program is still open, and we are still taking applications and doing projects. Next slide. And essentially, we've done over 1,600 projects since the PACE program has been open. That's over $50 million of financing for energy efficiency and solar energy. 50% of the projects that come through our PACE program are solar projects, and even though we have over 90 eligible improvements. So it's been a great program. We've done studies that show over 330 people are actually employed through this opportunity, and it's really been a tremendous asset to our community. Next slide is some of the other things we're doing. Sonoma County Water Agency has a really aggressive goal of doing carbon-free water. They've got lots of solar in process. They've got hydro, 2.6 megawatts of hydro. They've got plug-ins and hybrids. They're in the process of doing a wave power feasibility study and also looking at geothermal as well. So they're really aggressive, and also Sonoma County Fair has 1.36 megawatts of PV, actually more than they use, and so they're going to take advantage of the new law that allows them to get retail prices for excess solar pumped back into the grid, and I think we're going to have more and more people also oversizing systems potentially in order to be able to achieve that. And then I just want to, the last slide is my contact information. Feel free to call me or email me with any questions you might have. Our website, you can type in Sonoma County Energy. There's 2 or 3 websites there that offer good information on our Energy Independence PACE program or our Energy Watch program. And we are also, like I said, hoping to take advantage of the model that Rachel and Ben have laid out in order to be successful at getting a regional a regional solar initiative going, where we get the cities, the schools, the libraries, and all these other facilities to bundle together their electric loads and be served by solar power. So I will stop talking at this time and turn it over to moderator for any questions or any last thoughts.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sam. Now we will be inviting our presenters to respond to some of the really great questions that you have submitted. So beginning with Rachel and Ben. For the first question for Rachel and Ben, were the PPAs arranged with the electricity end user or the utility?
This is Ben Foster. The PPAs were arranged with the host sites themselves, so with each individual agency as the off-taker, not with the utility. So the contracts were with each of the 9 different agencies who would pay the PPA providers and see the financial benefits directly from the reduced cost.
Excellent, thank you. And as a reminder, you can submit questions in the questions box or just send a chat. So for our second question for Rachel and Ben, for sites where the electricity consumption was completely offset, 25% of sites, was electricity sold back to the grid at retail or wholesale rate?
Another good question. So those sites that were able to be offset by in their entirety, there were at least in California, depending on where these questions are coming from, there is currently right now, if there's a net overage on the savings on an annual basis from those, that previously that had been lost, although lately, very recently, there have been changes that allow them to capture some of those additional savings up to 100% offset. What had happened with most of the facilities that were in that category, then they did tend to size that a little bit less so that they would have the maximum economic return. So although 25% of the sites could offset 100% of their energy usage, generally those sites were back down to about 80% offset so that they could reach about a net zero on their energy bill, which is meaning that they can only offset about 80% of their electricity bill. So there wasn't, in those cases, there was not any overage that they needed to get extra compensation for.
Thank you, Ben. If anyone has any other questions, please, again, submit them in the questions box or send a chat. So you're seeing a 12% cost savings with the bulk purchasing. Are you seeing that in others as well?
Yes, the interesting thing, this is Ben again, the interesting thing with the cost savings that we saw with this particular group in Silicon Valley is that that's actually a fairly mature market from a solar perspective. Obviously, overall, there's still quite a bit of growth and evolution that's going to continue to happen in the solar market. So we see that potential in other markets outside of Silicon Valley or Northern California. We see the potential for even possibly a greater saving. So what we've seen from market input in the, for instance, in the Washington, D.C. area, that we are estimating right now possibly an even larger savings from that collaborative effort, partly because of scale, but also partly in those markets where the community or the solar industry is not as mature, because there haven't been as much activity in terms of deployed solar on the at non-residential, non-utility scale. So the target size that's for the municipal facilities and medium-sized commercial is that by aggregating that demand, there's even potentially a greater than a 12 to 15% reduction in cost. That's potential in those areas because of attracting vendors that are highly competitive from a cost perspective to participate in these projects that otherwise may not participate because they're focused on other sectors around the country.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And we have another question. How much energy does it take, or what is the cost to produce the hydrogen for the fuel cell?
In terms of, well, basically we pull natural gas from PG&E's power grid, and the fuel cell operates at a temperature of 1,400 degrees and converts that natural gas into electricity. And basically it'll offset about $1 million worth of electricity per year, and the cost to us for that natural gas is around $275,000 to $300,000. So the gain on the amount of electricity produced versus the natural gas used is about 3 times as much.
Great, thank you. And now we have a question for Sam. How important has support from the board and their leadership been to the success of the Comprehensive Energy Project?
I would say that overall the board support and guidance has been integral to the support and creation of the Comprehensive Energy Project. I think in some ways we might have been able to do it with a board that was not as interested in sustainability. However, being able to have a board that understands that we're going to do the project and pay it back with energy savings over the long term was key. Also having a county administrator who we could sit down and talk about the financing piece of it and who would allow us to take on the debt in order to be able to achieve that was also key. And to be able to show examples of other places that had done the same thing. And having an energy services company kind of stand behind the numbers too. So like I said, we're in the process of doing the measurement and verification of the project. And if the savings don't equal what was modeled, we can go back to ERCON and say, okay, it's not meeting that, therefore we need to go back to our contracts and show where we're going to get some payments returned back to the county in order to be able to meet what was projected. So overall, I think you don't have to have a strong sustainability-minded board to achieve this, but I think you do need to have some people who can understand the bigger picture and have someone, either a city manager or a county administrator, who's willing to take on a little debt in order to be able to achieve significant savings. I just also want to mention that we have a strong environmentally active community here that continually pushes the board in this direction. And so having that community essentially asked the board to set strong greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. The board did that, and then they came to us, okay, how do we achieve this? And so it's up to our staff to be able to meet the goals that, that the political elected officials have set for the county.
Great, thank you, Sam. And we have 2 more questions. The first for Sam. Can we get some clarification on the economic impact and exactly what types of jobs were created? Were they temporary?
Some of them were temporary, yes. You have jobs both in the manufacturing, the equipment, lighting, mechanical systems, and the installation jobs as well. I know that in terms of county jobs, we used some of our facility operations crews to do the installation, and we've been able to retain about 7 or 8 people on facility operations staff just doing the energy efficiency projects. And then there's a formula that ARA uses, I believe it's $92,000 spent equals 1 job year. So we've been able to use that for our county projects. And then on the Sonoma County Energy Independent side, the PACE program side, what we did is we went out and for all the people who have applied for jobs, all the contractors, either solar contractors or home performance building contractors or lighting folks or HVAC people, did a survey of those folks and said, okay, how many jobs were created based upon the projects you were able to do using PACE financing. And those essentially ended up being 330, I think they call them job years. And so it's, 330 people employed for a year in order to be able to meet that. So, so those are jobs that, hopefully other places will pick up the ball and keep running with this type of thing, because they are jobs that are, for a year or maybe longer depending upon the scope of the project. Also, I just want to let everyone know that the National Renewable Energy Labs has something called the JEDI model. It's a model that they feed in certain solar projects, wind, geothermal, all the renewable energy projects into a model that shows how many jobs can be created by doing certain types of projects. So if you just look up NREL and then JEDI, you can get information on how many jobs can be created by spending a certain amount of money on specific projects in your area.
Thank you, Sam. And for our final question for Rachel and Ben, as a follow-up to the question about PPAs with the utility or end user customer, how are you able to market the energy directly to the end user as well as own and operate the generation assets? Our attendee was under the impression that those functions had to be separated in California between the generator and the power market.
Hi, this is Ben. I don't fully understand the question. I guess I think what you're asking about marketing the power to the end user, at least in California, that's a fairly standard transaction right now, which is where the end user can purchase the power directly for their own use, not as a direct access customer, but because it's distributed on their site. So as a net metered system. So essentially these are net metered systems, meaning behind the meter on that customer or on that end user's facility. So if we take an example of a recreation center, for instance, where the roof of that recreation center has solar potential, the PPA provider would come and install it on their roof and would sell that power behind the meter directly to the city for use at their recreation facilities. Energy load to serve that load, and then that would be used to offset the demand that they are purchasing currently from PG&E, which is the territory that all these jurisdictions are in. And so this recreation center would purchase the power from the power purchase agreement provider, and that would reduce the energy consumed from PG&E. And that's a transaction that's not a direct access, the term that would be used in California, to buy it directly from off-site generation, but there's the ability to perform and to sell that on-site within behind the meter, within a net metering, up to 1 megawatt for each system, which is why most of the systems tend to be capped at 1 megawatt, is because from a net metering perspective within the California Solar Initiative program, to qualify for rebates and to maximize the rebate potential, it's a 1 megawatt limit. So within that limit, that you can qualify for the CSI rebates as well as directly interconnected without any additional process to go through as a direct access customer, which is what they may be asking about, which is where there would be a remote facility that would sell it as a competitor to PG&E. In this case, you're using it just like an energy efficiency, where you basically, from PG&E's perspective, you're effectively reducing the usage or the purchases from PG&E, and that's a transaction that's very standardized within California.
We would like to thank you all for joining us, and again, thank our presenters. For further questions or information, please contact Anna Reed at email address areed@icma.org. Thank you again, and have a great day.